Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Instruct session on logging assignment. How are you doing? Good to have great friendly faces here this morning. Right, so the talk that I'm going to do this morning is on mining the log files, and it's a presentation I gave at DevConf in March this year. And I thought it was quite well received, and it would be good to bring it back down to Durban and let Durban share a little bit of the joy. There's some relevance in today, just so that I can make a bit of an announcement. The first call for papers for DevConf 2019 opens today, so if anybody is keen to submit devconf.za, and you can go and find out the first bit of paper for next year. Right, so we'll just open today. I wanted to remind everybody that that had been here last time, and for those who don't know, the Scrum User Group gathering for South Africa is happening in November. We made the announcement last time. It's starting to gather some pace. I think it's the 6th to the 8th of November, so it's a two-day conference for Scrum type people. All right. Okay, so getting a feel for the room as I normally do when I do these talks. Anybody heard of the ELK Stack? All right, there's a fair amount of different. Anybody using the ELK Stack? All right, we've got two people using the ELK Stack. So this is going to be fairly new to a large number of people. So I tried to make this talk as high and slightly deep as I could. So there is going to be quite a lot of high-level stuff, but there will be some depth. I would ask that if anybody is confused or if anybody needs to ask a question, put up your hand. So this wouldn't be an Instruct talk if we didn't trade beers for questions. So anybody has a question, anybody answers some of my questions, we'll trade a beer. So these are the beers that we've got. I themed this beer talk. So this is a cool little brewery up in Butters Hill called Clockwork. These are pretty much handmade. You'll see the brewmaster has written batch number 19, when it brewed, and all that kind of stuff. So this is quite a nice little couple, brewing some decent beers, and these are damn fine beers. So I'm really keen to share them with you guys. All right. When I do talks at big conferences, I normally try and pick a theme for my talk, and the theme for this talk is transparency. Are there any architectural buffs? Does anybody know for a tennis ball to swap for beer? Does anybody know what that building is called?
A house.
A house. Yeah, that's thanks, Terence. At the last conference they said a glass house, which was pretty cool, and it's pretty relevant. It is a glass house. So this is it's a house called the Farnsworth House, designed by Dean Spanner Road in the 1930s, and it looks like it's still standing the test of time, because that doesn't look like a house that we're uncomfortable with, which I really like about this house. But if you ever look at the house, it's transparent. You're sitting in the house, you can see outside, and you're looking outside the house, you can see inside. And most people wouldn't want to live in a house like this. This is out in the countryside, and it's probably a very, very isolated area. But it takes in what's inside and it takes in what's outside. And I thought this was a really great theme for my talk, because we have systems that we often look at that we can't see into these systems. We can't see how our system is performing. We can't see how people are using our systems. And the best way to do this is to probably look at the log files. Every single thing that we use generates a log file. We generate log files in IIS, we generate log files in Apache, we generate log files in SQL, in Postgres. Whatever technology we use inside our systems, there will be some form of log file. The trick in the past has been, how do you surface the information out of these log files? Normally it's been this really wizard-like technology. You get to bring a file here and move a thing there and mix it up and try and work it out. But over the last couple of years, some decent technology started to emerge, which allows us to surface log information. And I'm going to present that to you today in the form of the ELK Stack. All right. So, introduction for my talk. What are we going to try and cover? I want to introduce the ELK Stack. What is the ELK Stack? How does it hang together? What are the pieces, the moving pieces, so that you understand the items that I'm going to show to you today. Everything that I do generally is done on Docker now because it's so much easier to pull a new container in, set them up, get them going. And in my last talk that most of you guys attended was on Docker. It gave you a little bit of a grounding into how Docker can be quite useful and how we can leverage its power. We'll see some more of that today. Then I'm going to do a really simple log import. So I'm just going to take a simple Apache log file. I'm going to import it and I'm going to show you some of the really cool things that we can just do with like literally 2 lines of a logstash file and a bit of a Kibana surfacing. In that one, I'm actually going to build everything from the ground up. But it's just going to be really, really simple. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, because not everybody's using Apache, I'm going to move on to an IIS log import and do some interesting transforms and show you how we can actually start to get some real data out of our systems. And then, because I have a love-hate relationship with Kibana, I want to introduce Grafana as an alternative to looking at surfacing up your data. And then to end off with is just to show you how we can surface up some system metrics inside our systems. This incidentally is where I started with Logstash, Kibana, and ELK, or the ELK Stack, because I needed to understand what our systems were actually doing. And just laying down a quick ELK Stack gave me a very, very quick overview of what was happening on the service inside this company. And I got so excited, the rest of this talk became a reality. All right, so what is this ELK Stack that we're talking about? It starts, I guess the best place to start would be in the middle with the Elasticsearch engine. So the Elasticsearch is the data store that we would be storing our data in. All right, so we can store and we can index and we can analyze the data inside this Elasticsearch layer. On top of that is Kibana. Kibana is the tool that we use to surface that data, to be able to visualize the data in terms of graphs and histograms and all kinds of really interesting pieces of information. And Logstash at the bottom is what we use to ingest beats and Logstash. So Logstash is basically a transformation tool which would be able to take the information that a file beat is putting out. So a file beat is a little application that sits, or a beat is a little application that sits on the file system or in the metrics of the system and starts pumping the information either directly up to Elasticsearch or into Logstash. Logstash will transform it, push it into Elasticsearch, and Kibana will visualize the information for us. And that's how the ecosystem hangs together. Lots of moving parts. So there's a fair number of moving parts to get them set up and get them going. I'll show you with Docker how to do it in literally 20 lines of code, get that whole thing up and running, and the whole stack will be ready and waiting for you. Again, one of the reasons why we want to leverage with Docker. On the side, so this is the open stack, or the open source stack that's available to anybody that wants to download it. It's for free, it's cheap and easy. The only investment you have to make is some learning time and a bit of pain while you learn. Incidentally, the stack from Elasticsearch is very well documented. I've never had a single problem. In fact, you can learn a hell of a lot from it. It's very well laid out. That's the one great thing I must say about the company, is that they invest a huge amount of time into usability of their tools. Just off on the side, and this is for an extension to the pack, so we have an open source version of the software, then we have the Elasticsearch version of the software, which allows you to have an extension pack. You can get some security, some alerting, and some monitoring, a little bit of reporting. That comes for free if you're willing to give them your email address and get a license for a year, and then every year you just keep renewing your license. And then if you've got these deep pockets, you buy the platinum version of Elasticsearch, and you start to get the graphing and the machine learning inside it so that it can start understanding what your data is starting to look like, and you can start teaching it based on the log data that's coming in. I'm not going to cover this because I do not have a deep pocket, and yeah, so we're going to cover just the basics. So this is just a flow diagram. So we talked a little bit about beats. There are a number of different beats, and I've only drawn 4, or I've only got a diagram that brought 4. I actually didn't draw this. I pulled through it off the internet. But we've got packet beats, which will look at the wire, what's happening on our wire, and pump that information up into Logstash or directly into Elasticsearch. Either, or we can do it on a file beat. So this is log files, and the beats will just monitor the file. As soon as it changes, takes the information that's changed, pops it straight into Logstash. Metric beats are beats that sit on your system, and we'll see an example of one of those. They just monitor information about your system and keep pumping information into Logstash or Elasticsearch. And then the WinLog beats, so anything that's happening on Windows in the logs we can put in. There's a number of other beats. Those were just the sort of high-end versions of what it is. All right. So beats is a very powerful little application that sits in, that logs the information on your file and sends it using a raft protocol into Logstash, and it knows how to back off and talk correctly. So we want to get that phone. All right. It knows how to keep in sync, and so it's generally a good idea to keep your data going directly from logs from a beat into Logstash and then into Elasticsearch, so that it actually starts managing its traffic correctly and manages the throughput. All right, we'll parse the information, transform it, and send it into Elasticsearch. Because often the log information that we get needs to be embellished, and we'll have a look at some of the tools that Logstash will give to us to embellish that piece of information. And then we can visualize the information using Kibana, or in my case, Grafana. All right, so we've talked about Docker in one of the previous talks, and for maybe the people that haven't been there, Docker is a very simple technology that allows us to containerize technology, pull an image off a known image store, start it up using the variables that are given on that image store, and we will have an implementation of whatever it is that we need to be working with up and running quite quickly. In the last talk, we had a look at that. So in this particular case, for the ELK Stack, we will pull down a version of Elasticsearch, we will pull down a version of Logstash, we will pull down a version of Kibana, we'll start them all up, tell them how to connect to each other, no more configuration. It's done for us. We don't have to think too much. We don't have to stretch too far to understand the underlying technology. Because as technologists, we don't have time to learn how to configure all of this stuff. Often the departments that we're working in don't have huge operation departments. We don't have huge DevOps departments. And Kibana, Docker will leverage that ability for you quite quickly. It's easy to configure using a Docker Compose file. And we're going to have a look at the quick Docker Compose file now. And it's lightweight and fast. So we talked last time about the Linux underpinnings of the technology, and just how lightweight and fast it can actually get. In fact, while I do this demo, you will see a number of different demos running. In the back of this, there's a number of different Docker containers that are running. You will notice that this is just a lowly little laptop, and there's a number of different technologies running using Docker at the same time, which I'll reveal at the end of the talk. And you'll notice that it doesn't actually skip a beat, mainly because Docker is so lightweight. All right, so let's take a look at what we're going to be doing. Can everybody see? Everybody at the back. Is that clear enough? Yeah. Just zoom out a bit. Is that clear enough? A bit better? All right. So this may look a little bit like Greek to some. Others it may be really relevant and easy, but this is the Docker Compose file to set up an ELK Stack. And I'll walk you through it quite quickly. So all it's doing is saying the image that you're using, go to Elasticsearch and pull down the image. I'm using version 6.22. I think they're on 6.24 at the moment. Saying when you get your data, you want to create a volume called ELK data, and you want to share the data, map the data inside the container to the data on the outside, so that I actually have a container to store outside, a container to store my data outside of the container that's running. Because remember, if you take the Docker container away, you lose your data. So we've created a volume and we've mapped it on. We've exposed the ports, and we've told it that it's actually going to be working on the ELK_OS network. So now we've compartmentalized these three elements to only work on a self-contained Docker, network. All right, we're going to set up Kibana, pull the image, give it some environment variables, which is a documentation to give it, tell it we define its Elasticsearch, and you will see Elasticsearch OS is the container name. It maps to the container name here. If you want to understand how that networking works, then refer to my previous Docker talk, but the Docker environment will take care of that for you. Mapping up my ports. We're all working on the same network. Forget about the depends on, that's not relevant at the moment. And then we pick up the Logstash put up the image, expose the ports, set up the network. These are the volumes where I'm going to put my configuration transforms. Generally, you will ship them with your file, but in this case, I've exposed it so I can play on the outside and see how it works. And then we've created a data volume and we've created a network. Run that file, Docker Compose up. It will pull your images, and the entire system is up and running. Super simple, relatively easy. Not too much configuration and fiddling around and trying to work on. Now, I understand that inside Elasticsearch there's probably a whole lot of indexing things that you would need to take care of, and a whole lot of other things. the ELK Stack will take care of that for you. So I don't think let's dwell too much on some of the nuances around configuring Elasticsearch and getting it up and running. All right. Questions at the moment? Good point to ask anything. All right, so let's have a look and see what on earth that thing actually does. All right, so I'm just going to start up the containers. Sec. Sorry, I forgot the commands. Alright, so what it's going to go and do is check if it's got the containers, start up containers, and we should be up and running in a few seconds. While it's doing that, I'm going to set up to run first demo. Alright, so we're up and running. Alright, I'm going to just run through the demo and then I'll show you exactly what's actually happening. So what this application is going to do is it's actually going to read a log file with probably about 20 or 30 log file entries from an Apache log file. It's going to take the information and it's going to embellish it a little bit inside Logstash. We'll talk a little bit about that and push it into Kibana. Not into Kibana, into Elasticsearch. All right, great. So we just need to CPU power here.
Sorry, question.
Yeah.
You haven't mentioned anything in your original slide. You mentioned beats.
Yes.
But you're not using beats in this.
This is actually a beat. So the application that's running now is I've just started up a beat, and it's reading the file, and it's going to push it to Logstash, and then that Logstash is going to put it up to Elasticsearch. Sorry, thanks for helping me get it up. Yes, so if it wasn't clear, I've started up file beats, which is going to read the file. There's no application here. It's going to read the file and pump that straight into Logstash. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. All right. So what is it doing? It's sorry. Let's just close that down. All right. So this is the transform inside Logstash. It's saying that you need to listen for a beat coming in on port 543, and it's saying that you're going to use this element to do the transformation. So the basic format is input, filter or transformation, and then output, where we're going to put it out. So it's going to run into, in this particular case, it's going to run the output to two different sources. One is standard out so that I can actually see stuff coming out. You don't generally do this once you go to production. And the other one is to go into Elasticsearch. All right, and what is it going to do? Now, this filter method is actually quite crazily complex and long. There's a whole different series of different filter methods, but this rock method over here is used for data that's of an inconsistent size, but actually has some form of determination. All right. In this particular case, I think it's got spaces between it, and it's got some element of it, but you're never going to be able to know exactly what the size is. It's just got some determination of how and where a piece of information starts and stops. So it's going to read the whole line in. This combined Apache log is actually just a variable inside Logstash, which knows how to read an Apache log file. And we'll look at how to read an IIS log file and what sits behind that. I just didn't want to complicate too much while we start getting into this element. So just understand that knows the format of an Apache log file. And then what we're going to do in this particular case is we're going to look for the client IP, and we're going to do a transform on it into what we call a geo IP. So that's going to transform the client's IP address into a lat long It's going to know the country, the city, the region of origin, and embellish our data in that and push that into Logstash, and we'll start to see how that starts surfacing up when we go. All right, so we should have had an import running. Just want to connect. All right, so we have an empty Logstash, or empty Elasticsearch database. This is how it starts up. First thing I'm going to need to do is I'm actually going to need to create an index. All right, so we go into our system, and it's already detected that I have some log information that's come in through Logstash at that particular date. It's the 1st of August. And all I'm going to do is tell it that I want to be able to use that information. Is that right? Select. All right, and I need to tell it if I want to use time series. Now it's important in this particular case to use a time series, and I have a timestamp, so I'm using my timestamp to set up my index, and I've created my index pattern. All right, that's what it looks like. You could start to see what the information looks like, and you'll start to see at the bottom here this geo IP information is the information that has started to be injected by Logstash into the system. All right, so if I go to Discover, I'll now be able to visualize my log information in its rawest format. All right, so now you can actually start seeing this, and this is often when we're trying to find errors inside our systems. We start in the raw format by filtering out pieces of information, because you've got access to every piece of information inside your system. There you go, that's the entire packet of data. And at the top here, you can actually search for information. So I could add a filter and say I want particular beat name, or where the client IP came from, or I could have a city name that is, and it might give me, I think it might give me, no, it doesn't give me data. All right, but we can filter the data. Not really the real purpose behind going in here, because that's not visualizing the data. This would be visualizing the data. So let's go and create a new visualization. I particularly like this because it starts wowing everybody. Let's put our information onto a map. All right, so we create a coordinate map. We select the filter that we're going to use. We tell it which values we're going to use. So we want to do a count of where we got hit by, or what we got hit by. We're going to do some geo coordinates as a geo hash, and on which field, on the geolocation field, and I click go, and voila. I've got a map of people around the world that are using my application. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. Come on, guys. How freaking simple is that? We've just taken the information, an IP address information from our log file. We've pumped that into Logstash. We've got Logstash to embellish it for us. Now, obviously, it's got some lookups and some really fancy stuff doing there, but you saw a line of code. Like, one line of code gave me this power. Imagine the power of your marketing department, or how excited people get when they start to understand who's using our system. We'll start looking at that a little later, where I've got a couple more graphs and things to be able to show you on another data set as we go. All right, but I don't know what you guys think, but I feel like, so let's just save that as a map of users. All right, let's go and create another visualization. I don't know, let's do a pie chart. And accounts, and let's just do by terms. Let's do city, let's do country of origin. So let's do country name, accounts, and we want to have a look at what the data looks like. Let's turn some labels, click, and there we go. United States, Russia, China, France, Belgium. Those are the people using our product. Quick, simple, easy. Start taking that to marketing department. On some of the clients that we've worked on with this has just become the most important aspect of what they actually do with their marketing departments now. Using our product, where they're using it, when they originate it, what time do they use the product, why are they using the product, what aspects of the product are they actually using, we'll start to see in the next demo how to actually put that together. All right, so let's just save this because that's just a visualization. That's users by country. We just save that. And we can now start to create dashboards which we can give to people because they don't want to just view everything one at a time. So, gosh, it didn't look like the visualization saved. All right. Let's just put that, the map of users on the board. And I can now start putting different elements in. Save this as user dashboard. User dashboard. Save that element and done. Enough dashboard. If I had saved my previous dashboard, I could have a visualization of it, just put it there. And now I'm starting to group my information in dashboard. All right. All right, come on, guys. I don't know, that's flipping, I don't know. Okay, I'm always blown away when I get to see some of this data and visualize it and surface it up. All right, so that's a very simple example. Let me just stop these containers. All right. Let's wait for that to stop. While we're waiting for that demo to go. All right, so I jumped ahead a little bit. So let's just talk a little bit about what happened in the back. So what I did in the back before I did this demo is I pulled these images from Docker. Normally, these images, the Elasticsearch images, used to live on Docker, and up until version 5, they used to live in the Docker Hub and Docker Store, and they're no longer living there. So anything from 6 up, you have to get directly from Elastic. But those are the URLs, very easy. I also pulled my Grafana container down because I'm using the beta version 5, and I've had to set some system variables. Incidentally, this entire demo, all of this code is available in GitLab account, which I'll make available to you at the end. But that's the relevance of that slide. All right, and maybe we should have got to this slide a lot earlier because it would have made a little bit more sense, considering I've now talk a little bit about the file. All right, but here's an open source implementation of the ELK Stack. That's essentially what you're doing. And what we're trying to establish is who's using my system, as you've just seen. All right, we have a file beat, which is shipping the log files into Logstash. We had a simple grok filter for the Apache log. We added the GeoIP transform, which just put in that information. We created an index, and we created some visualizations and added them to the dashboard. All right. But there's a whole ton more information built into the log files, and let's start having a look at a little bit more of it. So I'm going to do the basic implementation of the ELK Stack. So this is actually including the limited version of the XPack. It's the license that you request from Elasticsearch on an annual basis, and they send it to you, and you get to use their products. Few of the extra pieces. It's going to use another file beat. In this particular case, it's going to read a much larger version of a file that's come from iOS, not from Apache. It's going to do a bit more complex grok filtering on an iOS log, and I'll show you exactly how that grok filter starts working and how we can start embellishing some data. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a GeoIP transform, but we're also going to do a really cool transform called a user agent transform. And inside the user agent transform, they have managed to figure out what OS you're using, what device are you using. I can't remember all the little features that come out of the user agent transform, but we'll have a look at how we start surfacing that information out. All right, and then we're going to just include a couple of additional Logstash transforms that can show you some of the power inside the application so that you can start to actually understand how we can start embellishing a little bit more data into that. I'm going to then import some visualizations and dashboards and show a little bit more data because it does. As much as I think you like my company, I don't think you want to watch me make data visualizations inside demo. All right, so let's go and take a look at what we're actually doing here. So I'd like to just maybe start up. This is called so we'll start that container up. Let's just make sure that it's actually doing its thing properly. And then I'll walk through, maybe what we need to do is just walk through the import first. Okay, this is a fairly large import, so you can start to see it's going to run, and let it run in the background. It'll be done by the time we get there. So what does this pipeline look like? All right. So we're going to bring in a file beat. We're going to be listening for a beat on port 5044. We're going to start cleaning up our message a little bit. In IIS logs, we have a lot of this commented data. You'll see every single line inside an IIS log. It gets very verbose. At the top of every single line, it tells you the structure of that particular line. We don't want that information to be imported. So there's a way to clean out some lines of information that you don't actually need. You look at the message, you say if it starts with that piece of information, I just want you to drop it and carry on moving it. All right. If we have a line that we want to work with, we want to match it to say this is the message we're going to look at. And here's a line of information. You can see this is an IIS line. This is the log inside the IIS information. And this is the mapping that says this is a timestamp of ISO 8601, and you read it from there to there. This is the port IP, you read it over there. This is a word, and this is the method. You give it the name method, so that's the get, and then you can go URL path, and you can go IP address, and this is the start of that user information that I was talking about, who's using your system. All right, so that's essentially how a grok filter actually works. It's just matching these elements that it knows about. This particular format it would know about because that's defined by that particular type. And an IP host will be matched to that, and it figures it out for you. It's not super complicated, not a catalog that you need to be able to do. This does take a little bit of fiddling though. It takes a little bit of time. Often you don't have any of that when you first start with a new log. You just surface it up on the UI just to see that your mapping is working out correctly. You actually have a better mapping, have a tool inside the next version that I'm going to show you. They have a tool which will allow you to actually debug these lines of code and figure out how they map correctly. All right. In this particular case, there's a lot of information inside the message that I don't actually want to bring as the bulk of the message into my log. I don't want to fill up my entire log with the entire piece of message in its raw form, so I'm actually telling it to overwrite that message information right now, and just don't bring it into my log. I'm adding a field called status, so this is to tell me whether I've had a positive or a negative response to one of my calls. I'm adding another field called application, because now I'm going to actually start looking at the URL and deciding whether this is part of the website or whether it's part of the API or what feature inside that application I can actually start looking. So I can actually start filtering information and shoveling it down into channels so I can start to understand who's using my system, what they're using on my system, not who. GeoIP, again, we've just looked at, and then our user agent, that's going to take the user interface's information and convert it into devices and OSs and all that really cool information that we need. Here's some mutations. So this is the stuff, some of the more advanced features that you can get. You can mutate, you can copy information from the response to the status field. So now what I've done is I've actually made the response have some more information, more meaningful information to me inside my system. So developers may know the code, the response code as the status and not as the response code, and I've transformed that and moved the information across. Does that make sense? Everybody following? And I've also taken the code that was a string and converted it to an integer so that I can use it for some integer type functions. All right. I've also looked to see if I have anything that looks like search and I have anything that looks like a post. Well, then I'm using the API, the application, and the search feature on that application. And you can see I'm starting to embellish information inside my system. I can do the same for logins on a get. That's my application in the API. Features for the app. It's another application on the API. The features for security, for login, and I'm now starting to understand who's logging in, when are they logging in, how are they logging in. And then I'm going to do my output to Elasticsearch. This, incidentally, is a bit of a crude way to do it. There are ways to create lookups back into a database and be able to surface up rules so that you can use the rules inside the data set. So if this thing doesn't actually become too messy, this is if your system is relatively simple and there's some high-level information you're trying to get out, that's the fastest way to start working on it, but I wouldn't suggest that's the way you end your system. All right, so we've run the logs. I'm going to just refresh this. All right, you can see the information has come in again. I think there was, it looks like about 20,000 lines of data that we pulled in quite quickly, so it didn't take too long, less than a minute or so, to pull in all of that information. The information is pretty useless if we're not surfacing it. So just to walk you around this tool, this is now the extended version. You'll see there's some additional features in here. But new features for some dev tools, that's for debugging some of that grok filter. I can monitor. They've brought in this element called timeline, which allows us to do time series stuff. I'm not going to get into that, but that's the additional features that you would get in. So monitoring would allow me to be able to see what's actually happening, what my environment's starting to look like. And the dev tools would be, this is an element which would allow me to do a search. And this grok debugger is really handy because you're able to put in a line of data and put in your grok pattern, and it will give you the output of there so that you can actually start debugging your grok filters inside the UI without having to fiddle around with it too much. All right, so I'm just going to do some imports. So I've saved some objects before. I'm going to import some visualizations. All right, let's just wait for that to import. And I now have some dashboards. All right, so some dashboards that I now have. I have some SEO statistics. So what is my search engine optimization looking like? So I don't know. Well, let's have a look and see what we're doing. I've got some service statistics. I've got some user device statistics, and I've got a user dashboard. So let's start at the user dashboard. I can now start to see that I have users for this system all the way around the world, predominantly in South Africa. Now, that's quite interesting because when you take this data to a very small radio station in Durban and you tell them that people all around the country are using their little application that they deployed for people to do a little game, and then you start telling them that they've got reach in other parts of the world, they get really excited. Yes?
Quick question, is it possible to see user action, like what the users performed on the...
It is, so that information is there. That was part of the did they post, where did they post. So you have to think about how you construct your endpoint calls. So generally you would want to be able to put this onto some sort of API, and you can see what the users were actually doing, and then track the API endpoint and be able to push back in there. So there is a URL of the endpoint of what they're actually using, and that you could map to this is the action that they were doing. So that's where I was doing that. When you did the post and you're doing a search, then it's the search feature of the application. So yes, I can track what they're doing, and maybe we could surface that up a little bit. It might be in one of these slides. Okay, cool. It's a good question. Get a beer afterwards. There's a rule on that wall. Do not sweep it. All right, but as I said, now start to see how excited the small marketing department will get when you start surfacing up the logs files. They're not only interested that some people around the world, because nobody's got their radio reach, but they want to know exactly who's using their systems in South Africa. We can also start to say, where are they users of users that are not in South Africa? They're in the United States, and they're in China, and then Egypt, Taiwan, Russia. Interesting. Some of the stuff is a bit misleading, because I haven't taken out spiders and I haven't taken out search bars, so that's just a few little odds and ends. So some of that US stuff might be a bit hard because Google's doing a bit of a search on this stuff. But yeah, all right. Where are they coming from? Well, 15% is coming from California, that's probably going to be Google. This information from Virginia, Washington, and Texas is probably going to be users, but you can actually start to surface up the information where they're coming from. All right. Zay.
Do any of the other packages or licenses provide a real-time view of the logs as they are happening, or from whatever other sources that you're mining log information from?
So not quite a real-time version.
Yes, or like real-time functionality. So as the logs are coming in and they're being streamed and that, is there a way to actually look or visualize that information as it happens?
So if I'm going, I don't know if I'm going to answer your question directly, but so what we've done here is we've actually just imported the data as one big dump. Ideally, you would be reading the file data as it was being written to the log file and pushing it directly into Logstash and then into Elasticsearch, and you will start to see the trends over time. Does that make sense? So we've done this as just one bulk import. That's not generally the way it would be set up and run. It would be set up and run to constantly be pushing information into the system. And then in real time, it doesn't really show on this, but you can actually have an auto refresh. There's a little auto refresh function at this point over here where you can say at what interval do you want an auto refresh, and then you can start to see the information moving and turning. Does that answer your question? All right, yeah, so that's a good enough question. Sorry, dude. All right.
That's a catch, wasn't it?
Wasn't real time.
All right, let's take a look at some of the user devices. Nice little heat map to be able to say who's using our product and what and where. I mean, what developer doesn't want to know which devices are being used on their application? Like, I don't know. Let's have a look at this. This is the browsers that are being used. Chrome, Firefox, Mozilla, there's a whole truckload of things. IE, you can't really see it, but IE is great. Okay, that tells us something. That tells us whether we need to support IE or not, or what are we supposed to do, how are we supposed to go. It tells us a whole truckload of information. It tells me that I need to be focusing on these browsers when I'm starting to do most of my testing. My testing department should probably get access to this information, probably get access to this information. This is operating systems. All right, so it's quite interesting that this is the other machine, so that's just general PCs. We're using Windows, but we've got far more Chrome users. There we go. I have more information about my environment and what I'm supposed to be doing with it. I didn't have to do anything. I just took my log files and processed them. Service statistics. This is really important. I want to know on a high number of 200s. I want low 404s, because those 400s, 404s, things not found, things in error. I don't want those. These are redirects. We have a bit of a problem when we start looking at our SEO. So I don't want any of these nasty ones. I really want these green ones. All right, and that's super important because now I start to understand that my application might not be working correctly because 50% of the time it's giving it 200. Most of the time it's giving redirects. And sometimes it's giving you nothing. That's really important to understand. All right, and then on this particular diagram, I started to define who's using my application. Is it the API? Is it the web? Is it from the website itself, which is a smaller bit of element? And then on the actual element, what are they using? So where are we? Okay, so this is web, this is API, and this is the website. And then inside that, they're using the app, and then they're using search, and then they're using security. So we've got a small number of security elements, which is a small number of people logging on. One would hope that would be the case. It's interesting, on one of the clients that we implemented this on, they realized that 25% to 30% of their application was being used to serve up security keys. So why is it doing that? And it turned out that one of the people using their application was every time their page loaded, they would get a new security key. And the user would refresh the page and they would get a new security key because they hadn't laid out the code correctly on the other side. And so all they were doing was serving up security keys and wasting truckloads of time, and the performance of that client's application was crap. They kept complaining, your API is crap and it doesn't work. It's like, no, it's not crap. It's authenticating you every single time. It's going to generate a new key. It's going to send the whole thing across. There's a whole rigmarole around API security. So this is really important information. If you can start surfacing it up, to start seeing the trends inside your application. And we think it's doing its thing correctly. And generally it is when we develop it. But when we give an API or an application to a user, we have no idea what they're doing with it. This gives us a good idea of how to surface up that information.
Yeah. Before you move off that graph,
Sure.
would you be able to drill into that 404 and see the endpoints that were generated?
Yes, we could. We could. So we could then, I think I've got them on another graph. When we start to, yeah. So there are ways to do that. I tried not to get too complicated, but yes, answer your question.
Chris,
Yes.
in version 6.3, you can now add drawdowns to URLs.
Oh, cool. Here we go. 6.3.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's cool. Awesome. Thanks on that. Ornate is using and has been using for a long time, so there are other questions and more practical questions. I'm sure we would be. All right, sorry guys. I've been talking for so long that I need to just extend this to get the data back up again. That's it. It's only a 15-minute window. All right, and this is the stuff that also doesn't excite me, but was just interesting when I started looking at this. It turns out that things that are in the 302 are not really good for search engines. And you will see that 10% of this website is doing a redirect, and what that normally does is the 302 redirects, it means that the bot actually stops searching. Doesn't know what to actually do with that. And so this is probably a reason why we are not getting a massive amount of bot traffic inside our system. Yeah, these are the different bot scans. So who's scanning us where and how, what technology they're using. There's a Bing and there's a Google and a couple of other little things, so we can start to now understand how much of our website or our application is actually getting out there, and what are they scanning and where are they going. All right, and we probably need to get more positive feedback and less negative feedback, because then our search ratings start to go down if it's negative and they go up if it's positive. All right, so took some IIS data, did a simple transform, added a little bit of stuff into it, and that's the last one. It's really cool. I don't know. Simon.
So you had a nice little series of transformers there, taking some data, shifting around, throwing it forwards. So this runs on a computer, and computers fail. If that pipeline fails, does that data packet get dropped?
No.
What happens to it?
So that's one of the reasons why, or it would be one of the reasons why I suggested you use the logstash. So the file beat to go into logstash, because file beat will just wait, and it'll wait. And then
What I mean is there's a problem in your transformers. You've done something silly somewhere along the line, and you are no longer able to proceed forward in a rational way.
I think it would
Does that
then
drop?
no, it stops working.
Oh.
It stops working, and it would be a good idea to take that information and pump it to
On.
another.
That's what I was
Another-
going to ask.
another
Can you
process.
get ELK to launch itself so that you know if your data coming through is actually accurate in a meaningful way?
I haven't tried that.
Okay.
I haven't tried that. What? Yeah, I would need to get back to you.
Because, yeah, so we found that happening on some IIS logs, but I'm actually pushing from FileBeat directly to an ingest node in Elastic.
Oh yes.
So
Okay.
I have my grok filters
Yeah.
configured in Elastic. And on that, you can actually specify an unfail, which then just takes the
Oh,
message
okay.
as is and places it into another index. And then you can actually go and look at that after the fact. So you don't lose your
Yeah.
actual logging going forward. It continues on, and on fails, it basically just drops it into a separate index so you can evaluate it
Well,
later.
and that's directly into Elastic.
Directly into that.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. More knowing, just for clarity, they're able to do more of that filtering inside Elastic now.
Yeah, so from version 6, the ingest pipeline has come up. It's basically a programmable pipeline that you can point to.
Alright.
So instead of pointing to a specific index, you say this index and this pipeline, and you can put your grok filters, your daytime management, your GeoIP, your user agent, everything in there.
Alright, so that might not need, there might be no need for Logstash to go in. Just depends on how much power, because it also depends on what you're refiltering.
Exactly.
If you do too much processing on an Elastic, then you end up having, but you're using an ingest node, so we'll talk a little bit more complex about that. Alright, cool. Thanks, Morne. Sure. Question? Do you have a question? Just put up your hand. Giving you a hard time. Alright. So that's up. As I said, when I started, I had a love-hate relationship with Kibana for servicing up information. First off, Kibana only works with Elasticsearch. It's the only source of information that it can get. And I really like to get multiple sources of information. So the tool that I want to introduce now is a tool called Grafana, which allows me to, it's actually designed around graphing and around visualizing data, and you can get your data from multiple data sources. In this particular case, we're only going to do it from Elastic. The other cool thing about Grafana is that I can actually have some security on there. So with Kibana, all of those dashboards are available to everyone inside your organization. There's no way to lock them, there's no way to secure them, there's no way to say, marketing, you get to see that, and finance, you get to see that. There's no way to do that. And I must say, there's times when I don't want marketing to know about certain pieces of information, because what I do find is that when they see these gauges and they start investigating, and then all of a sudden there's just this big monkey on my back. And I'm just like, okay, I've just created another thing I need to service all the time. So being able to say, well, marketing, that's the information you need to see. You don't need to see the server information. You don't need to see what's happening over here. Stay clear of that. I can't do that in Kibana. The alerting and reporting, although it's available in the version I've just shown you, but it's not available in the free version. The alerting and reporting power in Kibana is available in the Platinum version. It's far more powerful inside Grafana. And what I find as well with Grafana is that I can share the dashboards far more easily because they're just a simple YAML configuration, whereas when you saw me import a dashboard into Kibana, that took a little bit of manipulating and manually to get that thing to import easily and successfully, although it looked like I was doing it quite slickly. All right, so let's just take a quick look at Grafana. So this is going to be a simple container. It's going to start at Grafana instance on 4300. It's going to work on the network for ELK, which is what we're running on right now. It's going to store any of its data into Grafana data, and it's going to listen on the ELK network. So now what we've got here is I've got a Docker container that we've lifted up, a set of Docker containers that are working on this network called ELK, and that's Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. And then I'm going to create a completely separate container, lift it up, and I'm going to tell it to also connect onto that network. So now you're going to see two Docker Compose files talking across the same network, and now you're starting to see more of that power of the networking that we talked about in the last conversation. All right, so let's quickly go in and look at Grafana. I need to start it. Will be good. Okay, running. All right. It's remembered my last session. Demo. I ran through this demo earlier this morning, so it's remembered my last session. It normally asks me to log on. All right, so just so that you. Right, and I'm able to create some dashboards. So let's look at applications by users. You can start to see a little bit more visualization. So I've just created the number of accounts that we've got. This is by country, so this is very similar, just pie charts. This is by country. This is by time zone, so I've gone and pulled out the time zone information because sometimes you want to see, okay, we've got America, United States, but which time zones are we actually working with? So I've certainly seen some information up here. Which of the countries we're actually coming in and what time of the day are those countries actually working on. And then countries by region, where in that country are we starting to work on? All right, so they're relatively easy. It's relatively powerful. How easy is it to edit? I just need to get into this. Sorry. All right. So if I wanted to be able to edit this diagram, maybe what we should do is just try and place something. So I can actually to place something, we just add an element, choose whether we want a graph or text or some heat map, pie chart, or a world map pane, or something like that. Let's just get out of this. Relatively easy to add. Just drag it and pop it down. Actually, and then if we're going to edit it, we're able to find the metric that we're on. Look at the terms that we're going to be looking at. So we just go in and tell it that we want the country keyword and sorry. Right, so there we go. So this must be having that. So I want the count, or I want the max or the sum, whatever. This is relatively easy. What are we going to do? We're going to do a terms filter, and where we're going to get our information from, and how we're going to show the information. Is it by date? In this particular case, we're using the date here. Change the legend, where the legend sits, and what it looks like. We can put time range elements on it and change the general look and feel. So that's just a quick look at what it is. Now I'm going to give this whole away. It's just move away from here. Just around here. Discard that. All right. So logging statistics for HTTP log statistics. This is the number of visits. Number of visits for South Africa, because remember this was for a small radio station. Again, so they wanted to know who was using it. These are the codes. This is the important element that you want to be able to know. Got 200s and 304s and 404s, and in the order of what's actually happening. So I can start to see. I can also start to drill down into that information. So drill all the way down. And I want to say, okay, at what time are we getting them? When are we getting them? What is the general trend inside data that we're actually doing? All right, and you'll notice as I drill down on one, it drills down into all the others. All right, so it's the HTTP methods. I've got a lot more guests and I've got a couple more posts, and so this feels like it's actually working. The head request is generally going to be a search from the bot, and then an options is also a search from the bot. All right, so this is general usage, which looks positive, and that's just general bot usage inside the system. These are the pages that are generally being used, who's using them and when. So it looks like it's probably some of the font pages that are being pulled down a hell of a lot. Maybe those don't need to live on our website anymore. I can actually go and put those into some sort of cloud-based source that might be easier on my system. All right. Top 10 clients by IP, and then clients by referrer, who was using the system. In this particular case, I could actually pull out the email addresses of the people that were logging into our system, because these are actually users, and it would be that our testers were actually quite active. These people are our testers inside the system, so you know exactly where we're going. All right. So log statistics by country. I'm not going to bore you too much more with this. All right. Here is something really interesting I want to be able to show you. This neat feature inside Refine, which allows me to get these diagrams, which I'm showing you, to filter by a particular element, and I've created a filter element here, and we'll show you how it's set up. So if I wanted to just say where, who, and what is being visited by China. Okay, so these are the IP addresses that we got from China. What are the general responses that I'm getting? So there's only a couple of 200s, but there's a lot of 404s and there's a lot of 302s, and it looks like there might be some network dealings on site on our website if I start looking at that element over there. So security may actually want to understand what's actually happening over there. So what are we looking at here? So these are just the status codes again in different formats, bar versus just a line chart. So let's just do that, I want to just show how we set up that element. So log statistics, user devices, start that. That's really interesting to see who's using what. So we've seen this before, but as an order, and I can visualize it in a neat format. There's the iPhone, Blueberry, that's for BlackBerry. That's really interesting. So I really want to know if I had some BlackBerry users. It's really cool. Another one that took me by surprise is got somebody using Windows 95. Yeah, that's really interesting. And it's quite interesting. So if I actually wanted to have a look at that, and it turns out that if I go to China, I'm picking on China. I don't need to. So it's got interesting data, I guess. If I go to China, I'll see it's still Windows 95. And what I've been able to do is filter by regions. So I found out that it's in Tennessee. There we go. 2 calls from China, Windows 95 in that particular region. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know how they're doing it. I guess I could decide whether I like that data or not, or if it's relevant to me, but I would never have known. So let's just take a quick look at these charts. The really cool thing I like about this is that I can group the charts into different things. I can give them different tags. So I can say anything to do with HTTP. I can quickly go and find all of the charts with HTTP, or by country, or by device. So let's just go into users, and it's just actually, that's not the one I wanted. I wanted this country by this guy. And we start to edit. So in this particular case, I can tell it what the name is. I can give it some tags. I can tell it what the auto refresh intervals might be if I wanted to have this thing refresh itself. But the interesting thing that I can also do is I can actually create some variables inside the system. And I've said to it, I actually want to go and look, find the terms by the field, and call out everything that's the country name, and add that as a variable, and automatically adds that to the top of my system. And then every one of my graphs that I want to be able to filter by that variable, I just tell it to be able to filter by that variable, which I find really, really powerful. This is another feature which I really enjoy, is that it keeps the different versions of the diagrams that of the charts that you've actually worked on, so that you can actually go back to a version of it. So it just snapshots those and actually keeps them in. Here's the permissions, who's able to get to it, where and how, can they view it, can they edit it, what can they do. So it's a lot more powerful. And if I wanted to be able to give this particular dashboard to somebody else, I just take this little JSON file. Sorry, I said it was YAML, but it's actually just a JSON file, and I export it and send it into. One of the guys that we're working with at the moment actually takes these elements and actually has a little code generator element, and then they disperse it to 2 or 3 different sites, and they manage to get consistency because they can keep it through, send it through JSON packets and be able to maintain it easy. Also, the cool thing about these JSON packets is you can put them under source code control. I'm a big fan of keeping most of my systems under source code control. One last item, so this particular graph had the country variable and the region variable. To put those in place, basically all we needed to do was say, there's the country, and create a new one called new variable called region, and region is dependent on country, so you can daisy chain these elements together, and you can just narrow the information down smaller and smaller. All right, so some powerful elements from Grafana. Any questions? Okay.
Can you view the raw data in Grafana?
No. What we normally do is use Kibana to surface that raw data where we're going, and then most of the pretty pictures are done in Grafana.
That JSON file that you just is basically, so if you've got a vanilla Grafana that you've just started up,
yes.
All you do would just take that JSON file, stick it on,
Yeah.
and it just,
Yeah.
all your settings,
Yeah.
metadata that you created will
And the really cool thing is, if you go to Google and you type in Grafana dashboards, a truckload of them start arriving. You can share them. It's really, really powerful. I didn't have that much more. I didn't have as much joy with Kibana.
Oh.
Thanks. All right, so while I've been doing this demo, I've been monitoring my machine using a completely separate ELK stack. All right, so there's been another ELK stack for metrics. It's been sitting in the back, collecting metrics of what I'm actually doing. I've got a virtual machine running inside the back that's running Windows, and I've got my own machine running now that's now logging information via the system information to Kibana. All right, so what I've asked it to do is inside the beats, the metric beat system, you can tell it which modules the logging happens by a module. So you can decide which modules you want to log in. If you want system, if you want Docker, Postgres, Kubernetes, Elasticsearch, there is a truckload list of modules that are available for you to monitor. You don't do anything else. You just basically tell it these are the modules that I want to be able to log. Start up your metric beat, and it will tell you when it will start logging the information. We'll start looking at the logger files. But essentially, if there's generally the rule is if there's an open source system that is popular, you could log it quite easily. Windows is a little bit more tricky. We can talk a little bit about that in the offline conversation. So what I've been doing is running a separate metric stack on my system just to show you how we surface up system information. And I've used the out-of-box visualizations and dashboards, which is in the documentation, to be able to surface up my information. And if I go down to this element over here, it's auto-refreshing every 5 seconds. You can start to see I have this machine's called Boston, and it's busy running using its memory, and this other machine is called York, and it's pretty much asleep because it's not doing very much. But I can now start to see how many machines am I using, what's the CPU usage, what is the memory usage, what is the disk usage, what is the traffic usage inside the system. This is where I started my journey onto ELK Stack. Leveraging this inside my organization, putting some metric beats on some of my servers, and realizing that the build server was dying. The database server had backups on it for so long that it was running out of disk space. I can't even remember the different problems that suddenly became more of a problem because, well, they became a problem that we could solve quickly, but they would, we could anticipate some problems inside the system. So if I wanted to understand what's actually happening inside Boston, I can click on Boston, and I can now start to see what's the general CPU usage at the moment, what is the load, what is the inbound and outbound traffic, what's generally using the disks, how many processes are running, a little bit of CPU usage to understand what's user, what system, that information. What is my general trend load? So this is 1 minute, 5 minute, and 15 minutes. It peaks and then it drops and it carries on, and this is kind of what you want. That's the kind of thing you want to try and avoid, especially if that's the 15-minute trend. You can start to see memory usage, you can start to see network traffic, you can start to see processing by memory. VirtualBox is being used quite a lot. I've got eyes and ears into my system. And honestly guys, I didn't do anything. I just read some documentation. All right, so that's the dashboards for the system. Let's just have a look here. So that's system overview. If I want to go into York, you can start to see a bit peaky, and you'll start seeing it looks very much like metric beats is actually working. So it's sending its information across, and it's pretty much asleep. If I wanted to understand what's happening on my Docker information, so I've been logging my Docker information, there we go. I can start to see what's actually happening in my Docker environment. I've got these elements here, ELK metric, ELK search, the log stashes, who's using memory, what's the CPU usage, which ones are running and what's their general usage, how many are running. All right, just really powerful information. How do we set that up? So I'll walk through. This is how we'll do this as the last bit of the chat. So metric beats. We need a beat file to tell us where do we find our information for our modules. Don't worry too much about that. I'm pumping my beats straight into Elasticsearch. That's the endpoint that I need. So that's all I need to be able to tell it, where to find its modules. and where we're posting stuff to. I've got two modules. I've got the Docker module, and I'm telling it that I need to know the tailored CPU, some disk I/O, the health check, the info, the memory, and the network. And this is where you're going to find that information. That's where the docker.sock, everything's been written into that, and the period of monitoring is 10 seconds. On the system, I've got a couple of other elements. I've got some more powerful information. I can say that I want CPU usage, load, memory, network. I took out core and disk I/O and socket because I didn't want to overload the system, and I'm saying log that at every 10-second intervals. And for the system, I want file system and file stat information coming through at a 1 minute interval, and uptime, and I don't know if there's anything else at a 15-minute interval. And so now it knows how to start pushing that information at different intervals inside my system. And you saw the results of what I've actually got. Right, so I guess in conclusion, there's a lot more power that we can start harnessing inside our system. We start reading our log files. We can start getting some of the system information out and start getting information about what's actually happening inside our system. And I hope that you've come away today with some information, that you're as excited as I was when I first saw it. If not, I don't know. All right, so this didn't look blue when I first created this slide. That's interesting. So the source code for this file, for all of these demos is available at GitLab, Chris_Tite, devconf2018.git. So go and pull that if you want all the source code information you want to be able to play around with it. These slides, excluding this slide, is available at SpeakerDeck, Chris_Tite, mining a lot of files. So if you want to go and pull information and play around. Right, and I just wanted to say thank you. And anybody wanting to submit, I would encourage speaker submissions. And just to share my cheeky little slide at the end of every talk I do at DevConf. Instead of coming to work in Durban, it's a very cool part of the world to live in. Thank you very much for joining me this morning, guys. Any questions? Nothing. No, I've got 2 more beers. Chocolates if you don't drink beers, by the way. Yeah.
So with that information, once you've got it in your dashboards and stuff, can you add some sort of triggering onto that? So for user notifications, firing emails off, or send SMSs.
Yeah.
Things like
So that was the alerting that we talked about.
Okay, so that was part of that.
Yeah.
But you need a subscription.
You need a subscription for Kibana. That's why I go to.
No. So it's now open source.
Okay.
So you don't need that. But with the XPack comes the alerting, which is the watcher part of it.
Yes.
And that's what you need the sub for. But you can get a trial subscription if you want to test it for a while.
Okay, cool.
So you can test it up, and then you can set up watcher jobs, which is basically it watches the data. And you can set up a specific trigger, and if that trigger gets logged, it will either send a mail or do something.
So that's paid for on Grafana. It's not paid for. It's part of that log. When it gets to a particular area, you fire off whatever alert. And that's why I say I have this love-hate relationship with Grafana, and you know, I love it, and then I'm like, So, okay. That's why I wanted to just show you a bit of an alternative view. All right. But I think their tools are awesome, but there's some restrictions, and I want to be able to share with you how to get over those restrictions. Thank you. Any more? I've got one more.
This beats.
Are there any sort of trimming options in the logs, or does that Elasticsearch database just grow infinitely forever and ever and ever? Can you just keep that?
So that's a good question. The logs grow quickly. quickly will that log grow. And there is a tool called Curator, which you run, which you tell Curator, this is the index, or this is the level that I want to. On that question though, it's very important to think about how you create your indexes, because you don't want to be able to take snapshots out of an index. You actually want to be able to take an entire index out. And you'll have a look, if you noticed this, you would have seen a logstash index came in as logstash dash 2018.0801, so it does it on a daily basis. And they create those indexes on a daily basis so that you can take a whole day's index out, because if you take portions of an index out, it gets all nutty and smelly inside, and you don't want that. So the lesson from that is, yes, you can do that, but make sure that you are able to pull an index out as a unit. It's far better to do that than to pull it out as pieces. Sorry. Question was here. File beats are free. Yes, they're open source. The Beats application, yes.
Oh,
You were asking whether that Beats application
no,
is
the
free.
ELK part was actually.
Everything, the Beats are part of the ELK Stack.
Okay.
Yeah, so the entire tool set is open source. And then when you start to reach for the more meaningful pieces, this security and alerting and all that, then it starts to be fine. Yeah. I noticed Mohammed pointing at this slide. This is my cheeky slide to Joburg, because this is 7:30 in the morning, and I was traveling to work, and there's no brake lights. That's how cool it is living in Durban. And then you get to go to the beach and do this. And I don't need to sell Durban to you guys, but if this is going on video, then Durban is an awesome city to come and work in, and it's an awesome city to live in, and work-life balance is always a plus. So, guys, thank you very much for attending my talk this morning, and the next talk will be in the middle of October. I'm presenting how to get started with Kubernetes, running on a local machine, why you want to start using it, how you could start using it, and I'm hoping that these talks are a build-up to how we can start leveraging off a little bit of a cube. So that will be the first talks, just getting started with Kubernetes, and then we'll start again in 2019. So thank you for joining me, and wish you a good day. Cheers. Thanks.